Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you and call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, June the 6th. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay. So as we meet here tonight, it is important to remember that people from all backgrounds are gathering in London to remember and honor the lives of the Afzal family that were taken in a senseless, targeted act of violence 2 years ago today. We know that the Muslim community and the residents of the City of London continue to bear the weight of this tragedy. However, the nature of this act has affected communities beyond the city limits. Today, we not only remember the loss, but we look forward as we continue to heal and foster an environment of inclusion, acceptance, and safety for all residents. We celebrate the coming together of all peoples to say hate has no place here. Lucan Biddulph condemns all forms of hatred, discrimination, and violence, and we denounce all forms of Islamophobia and other forms of oppression. We remain resolute in our effort to promote understanding, respect, and compassion. Okay, we do not have to go into closed session and we have no public meetings, but we do have a delegation this evening, and it is my pleasure to welcome Christine Scrimgeour here to go over our draft financial statements. I think that did you join us in person last year? No, so I think that this is the first time that you've joined us in person in a few years. So it's great to see you here live, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I think I'm turned on now. Am I okay? Okay, perfect. Good evening, everyone. I have sent out the draft audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2022. And I'll go through them page by page. Please don't hesitate to ask me any questions. Stop me if I'm not answering your questions, and we'll hopefully be able to do that. They are draft at this point because under Canadian auditing standards, until those charged with governance, which would be this council, approves these statements, they cannot be finalized. Once they get finalized, we will issue them and then also start working or finish up on your FIR and get that submitted to the province on your behalf. So that's the process. It is a clean auditor's opinion, which means that I didn't find anything materially incorrect in the work done. At this point, I'd also like to thank the treasurer and her staff for a job well done. It has, as we get into these statements, we'll see it has been a very busy year, and they have risen to the challenge, and we're here the 1st of June. So that means that things have gone well from a financial standpoint in the recording of those transactions. Moving forward to the numbers now, the consolidated statement of financial position. So when it says consolidated, that means that it's all the boards under the township with the elimination of 49% of the fire board that you share with South Perth. So that's the consolidation piece, why that word is in there. So as we see, it has, so I'm looking at these financial statements. So financial assets, 16.9, almost 17 million versus almost 13 million the previous year. That $4 million increase is mainly debt that is owing to the township at the end of the year. So we have debentures in progress for the 3 different items, being the community center, the pool, and the soccer field. So those are the 3 amounts owing to you at the end of the year that make up most of that difference. There was also a large project that you did in conjunction with the County of Middlesex with regards to 2 different roads, being Saintsbury and Alice, and the county owed us money at the end of the year, and that has been taken care of in this current year now in 2023, but that was over $1 million as well. So all those things went into accounts receivable, that increase there. Under liabilities, again, a huge increase. The debt is the major portion of that. And then the accounts payable and accrued liabilities, because those projects were all what we call in progress at the end of 2022, that we also had significant accounts payable to all of those contractors that were doing those projects for us. And also we set up all the holdbacks on those projects as well, even though they may not be due until this next year. They are part of the work that had been done in 2022. Coming down to net financial assets. So I usually always highlight this one this year, and because I like to see it going up. But again, because of this year and all of the capital, we'll see that this is all related to capital, because when we get to the actual reserves, we have maintained our reserves this year. So the new debt and then all the receivables and payables that I've talked about have accumulated down to this decrease in net financial assets. And again, as we go forward and these projects come to a completion and we start building up our reserves again, that number will start to go in the other direction. Under that is the non-financial assets. So these are the assets that you cannot sell. These provide the services that you do. So the roads, the buildings, water, wastewater. And you can see the tangible, if you add tangible capital assets plus the capital works in progress, we're at almost $54 million, $53 million. And last year it was 43 million. So a huge increase there. And again, those are the main projects that I mentioned already. Coming down to non-financial assets, increase of about 9 million with all of the ins and outs there. Down to accumulated surplus at the end of the year, 56 million versus 50 million last year. And that's, we'll see that is all in the capital again. As I mentioned, the reserves have stayed fairly consistent, which is great. Any questions on that statement at all? All right, moving forward. So this is the statement of operations and accumulated surplus budget of 2022 versus the actual, and then the actual for the previous year. So again, a significant different year this year than last year. And I'll just highlight a couple of the changes. The overall revenue increase is due to a couple things. One is because those roads that we did with the county are not our roads. So we treat them as operating that cost of the road piece itself, because they will capitalize those roads on their books. And so we show the grant up above. So in that government grants over budget of about $1 million, just under $1 million of grants from the county to pay for those roads. Or the road portion of those projects. And then you'll see investment income, as you are well aware, has gone up, thankfully, somewhat. And then other revenue, the decrease from budget there is the other revenue is the donations that we're hoping to raise on the community center. And that obviously is in progress, so it's not complete yet. Under expenditures, I remind council that we do not budget for amortization. So that's the using up of those capital assets. This year, the amortization was just short of $2 million. So if you take the 7 million that we budgeted, you add the 2 million and then add that $1 million of the county roads that I keep talking about, you come up with what the actual expenditures are. And so that excess of revenue over expenditures before other, this is a good indicator to council that your operating revenues are exceeding your operating costs by 966,000 versus 735 last year. So we're staying consistent there. Under that line are all the other types of revenues that relate really to capital. So the government transfers related to capital. We budgeted 6 million, just over almost 4.3 million. And really that's just timing of those projects not yet being done. So we haven't recognized all the grant revenue yet. A small loss on capital asset disposal, and then the developer and other contributions related to capital very close to budget. Coming down to that surplus at the end of the year, 56 million, and we'll get to the note that breaks that all down in a minute. Any questions on those numbers at all?
Do you have a question?
Sure.
I actually have one, Christine. So I guess I'm a little unclear. Back up to the revenue, the government grant line, and
Yes.
you say that is in has to do with the county roads. So that is the project that we did on Saintsbury and Alice.
Yes.
I guess I'm a little confused by grant, because it really wasn't a grant, because they were paying for the portion of work of their roads.
Right. So under Canadian auditing standards, you have to what I call gross everything up. So you have to show the expenditure and the revenue. And so because that was your project and it was under your name, and parts of it do belong to you, it's just that piece did not belong to you.
Okay.
But that's good, Kristen. Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess then further down, when the government transfers related to capital. So would that be the community center project, the money that
Yes.
we're recovering from there?
Yes.
Okay,
Majority of that is, yes. I think we got a couple small grants on some
Counselor
arena
Hodges.
things. Sorry, yes.
On this page in the revenue section, I wanted to ask about the investment income. 'cause
Yes.
It looks like it's significantly higher than budgeted in last year. And I just recall from the Conservation Authority Board of Directors, they had a significant loss in investment income due to I guess the markets being bad last year. So I just wanted to ask about that and how we were able to
Sure.
get good results.
Sure. So there's a couple pieces of that. So first off, we don't invest in anything other than GICs. So we don't have, so we're not, so we're more susceptible to interest risk. But not the market fluctuation. So yes, many of my other clients that are not municipalities, but other clients. And just so you know, the Municipal Act only allows certain investments that municipalities are allowed to invest in. They're pretty strict because of that fact, that you're dealing with ratepayers' money, basically. So that's the first piece. The second piece is the reserve. When we see reserve fund balances, a lot of those projects, because we were able to get those debenture, we got $2 million of debenture money in this 2022. So some of that project was financed by outside. So we'll see interest costs go up as well, but we'll have more money. Our reserves are earn interest every month. So that's where it is. And then the interest rate, obviously, from 2021 to 22, probably 5 times. Any other questions? All great questions. No, okay. I'll move on then. So the next statement is the cash flow statement. And I won't spend a lot of time on this because I sort of belabored it a bit on the other statement, but this is the increases and decreases of the non-cash items on your balance sheet. And we've talked about most of these here. Obviously, the biggest numbers being the new acquisition of capital assets, being both the capital work in progress and the actual assets that are in use. And then the net proceeds of that new debentures. Coming down to your cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year, up about 500,000, and your surplus for the year was about 315,000, just over 315,000 operating surplus, and that was moved into the reserve as per council's resolution that I received. And then that last consolidated statement of changing net financial assets that you'll see, these are this is really where the large numbers show up here. So excess revenue, and then we took that revenue and purchased a lot of new assets. So those are really the numbers there. Coming down to net financial assets at the end of the year. And again, a big swing from last year, but as I said, we would be increasing that, going in the right direction as we finalize these projects and move on. Then we get to the notes to the financial statements. These are standard notes that you'll see in most municipal financial statements. I will comment on a couple of them though. In addition, I always talk about this in note number 4, in addition to the revenues that are on the income statement that we just went through, the county and school boards, the taxation revenue that we raise on behalf of them. We obviously administer all of that and then also pay that over to them. Significant amount there, about $4.5 million there of additional revenue that goes through these books. Note number 6 is your obligatory reserve funds. So these are the reserve. So we have obligatory reserve funds and then regular reserve funds. These are the ones that you cannot spend on items other than what they're stipulated for. So obviously DCs are as per the DC bylaw, and then the federal gas tax, again, per their requirement. Safe Restart, we now have spent all of that. So you'll remember a couple of years back, they gave us some money towards the COVID costs. That has now all been spent. And then the long-term debt, and again, that just breaks it down there. So that small amount that comes out are what are child-rearing loans. So those are ones that we issue on behalf of ratepayers, we collect it from the ratepayers and then pay it over to the province. So it's not our debt per se, we just have to administer it. And then we have the amount to be retired over the next 5 years. So you'll see those payments on that new debt don't begin until 2024 because of the timing of them. So you've got a little bit of leeway there. And then this next note, I think, is the one that council will be most interested in. So this is a breakdown of that accumulated surplus, as I mentioned, and you'll see here our total reserves are up 1.5 million. And a lot of that is water, wastewater surpluses, as well as our general surplus that I mentioned, which went into construction, road construction. And then the reserve funds are for the two fire boards. We keep those monies in what's called a reserve fund. So the difference between reserves and reserve funds is whether they have a bank account specific to them. And as you can see, the fire boards do, and they earn some interest, but they have stayed fairly consistent too. Note number 11 is a couple different commitments that you have. So you do have the commitment to the City of London with regards to the Lake Huron primary water system, and you do own a share of that. However, because your share is very minute compared to the full system, we don't consolidate it in these statements. We just disclose the activity of that. Note number 12 is a required disclosure on the public sector salary disclosure. And then note 15, unfortunately, according to CPA Canada, we still need to keep in the COVID note because it did affect the prior year, which these statements are both 2022 and 2021. And it actually did affect the beginning of 2022 as well. And I don't have, and then we have two schedules at the back. One is the consolidated schedule of tangible capital assets. So this shows your assets by component type. And as you can see, infrastructure is about 75–80% of your total, which would be roads, water systems, and wastewater systems. And then the last schedule is a schedule broken down by function of the revenues and expenditures on the statement of operations. This is required again under PSAB. And is a segue between these financial statements and then the FIR that's filed by to the province, which is all your revenues and expenditures there are broken down by functions. And so this basically takes your statements into that format.
Okay, well, thank you, Christine. Any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
Just the 315,000 surplus, I think you said we had.
Yes.
Just quickly, I think went over that. Where would you say that was the biggest area that came from then again?
I would say the biggest area, so you had some significant increase in some user charges, mainly building permits. So that would be one of the areas that will obviously not be as great in 2023, I'm sorry to say, but 2022, so that piece was there. And then there was really some savings in 3 or 4 different areas. Again, the Safe Restart money of 50,000 helped to offset some costs. So that would be part of it as well. But there wasn't any one
area.
major thing that I noted.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Christine, so I was just looking on page 16 and just for me, just under revenue and user fees for transportation 5256. I just wondering what is that from? Sorry, page 16.
Yep, I'm good there. Okay, and which number?
Page 16, user fees under revenue 5256.
That would be if we did any road work so sometimes when we're doing road work and somebody's driveway is there and there needs to be sort of a patching job done, they will pay that. It's that kind of thing.
All right. Okay,
I don't
thank
know
you.
specifically what the 52, but that's typically what it is.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
You're
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks.
Any other comments? Just further to Councillor Hodgins' question, just about our investments. If we're hand tied, I won't say handcuffed, to the type of investments we could make, would you have, I mean, is there anything else we should be doing? Is there any other ways that maybe with some of the reserves that we have that maybe are sitting there, like that, is there a way that maybe we could generate some more income?
So the one investment that's out there that you've probably heard of is One Fund. So that's one that's provided by the municipality, MFOA basically is a, I'm not really sure of who actually owns it, but it's through MFOA, which is Municipal Finance Officers of Ontario. And that is definitely available. However, again, like any other market, I mean, even your own OMERS investments have tanked. I'm sorry, that's probably not a good word, but anyway, had some struggles for sure over the last couple of years. So you actually look golden right now because you didn't go into that. It's really how much you want to monitor those kinds of investments. If you've got expertise in that area, how you want to do it. But right now, GICs are as good as anything right this minute. I know that most of my clients, so I do probably 50 to 60 not-for-profit clients that all have investments and have had realized loss in the last year. But most of them have started to rebound. So, you know, it might be something you want to maybe take a look at in 2024.
Thank you for that. One last call for questions or comments for Christine while she's here. Okay, thank you for coming. I certainly appreciate all the work that your team does, but also appreciate your comments for our staff. I do know that we are very fortunate to have Catherine and the team behind her. And together you guys can support each other, and this is where we are today. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay,
It's nice to see you all.
it was good to see you.
Be well.
With that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder that we accept the draft financial statements as presented on June 6th. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor, and that's carried. Okay, thanks very much. Good night. Okay, on to our minutes. And we have a set of minutes in front of us from May 23rd. And I didn't see anything that needed to be amended. If council doesn't see anything that needs to be changed, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes as circulated. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? That's carried. Business arising from the minutes. Isn't this opening? Can you open it? It's weird. I can't get it to open. I don't think that there was anything that changed on it. Nope. And the traffic calming, we've got a report later tonight. Was there anything from the minutes that council wanted added to business arising? Okay. Then we'll move on to correspondence. There were a number of items received, none that council, or excuse me, none that staff pulled for council's discussion. Was there anything that council wanted to be pulled and discussed from the items of correspondence received? Okay, then I do need a mover and a seconder to receive those items for information, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan. All in favor? That's carried. On to committee reports. The first one is from Blue Water, Deputy Mayor Manders.
We didn't meet, but there was a producer responsibility meeting at Try Recycling, and some of our staff was there. I wasn't able to make it, so I was going to ask Ron to kind of just do Cole's notes of what he saw at that.
Thank you. So through the mayor to the rest of council, the session, and I believe Councillor Hodgins was there in his other role with North Middlesex as well, so he can.
He was there as councillor.
You're too bad. Anyway, it was a good session. It answered a lot of questions. Blue Waters is going to be the service provider for at least the interim. For the foreseeable future, our residents will not see any change, and that's the positive that came out of that meeting. So for the, I believe, trying to remember exactly how long it was. I think he said till 2020. Jeff, do you remember? No. Well, I think it was longer than that, actually. I think it was 2026. something like that. So, and that's just going to buy them some time. So I think the producer responsibility angle of this whole situation, that's going to buy them some time to figure out. And I think it gives Blue Water an opportunity to show the producers that they can do a good job. So, I think it's a win-win for everybody. And like I said, first and foremost, the service to the taxpayer will remain the same for the next few years.
Okay, CEDC.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've report this evening. There's two sets of minutes for council, one from March 29th, one from May 31st. I'll just highlight, if I may, just the May 31st meeting. We had a delegation. It was Mr. Todd Copeland, came from the Community Futures Development Corporation. We had a very good presentation about what the services they provide to small rural businesses and small town businesses with respect to advice, business loans, and those sorts of things. We have attached, I think Lisa has graciously attached Mr. Copeland's presentation to that. If anybody wishes to go through that, that's attached to the minutes. A couple of other things that we talked about. Lisa gave us a report on Environics. I said that right, I think. There's some information that we reviewed that with the committee. It was extremely good information. We are just, I think, just checking to see, and I don't know if we have an update on that with respect to our ability to circulate the information to council and local businesses. We're just going to get an update on that at some point. But the information basically was a lot of demographic information with respect to buying habits of people in our community, and it would be, I think, a good tool. I thought it was a very good tool for our businesses. There were a couple of project updates, new business. I'll just touch on that. It was discussed about the new mobile app that would be a part of our promotions and events. And that would be part of our communications plan that council has already approved. And I think we've deferred updating this until the new year. Is that correct? That's right. Okay. Our next meeting is scheduled for June 28th at 6:30. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for CEDC? Okay, Lake Huron, there was a meeting. I did miss that because I was away, so be looking for the minutes to be included when they arrive, when they're given to me. Fire boards, we have upcoming meetings this week. ABCA.
Nothing to report at this time. We're meeting next week. There is an item on the agenda later for the cost portion agreement.
Parks and Recreation.
There will be a meeting later this month, Madam Mayor, and I'll report to council after that.
Thank you. We'll look forward to that report. On to staff reports, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first report before the group tonight is the Housing Accelerator Fund. The federal budget in 2022 announced $4 billion in funding, and that funding is going to be spread over the years 2026 and 2027. It's basically a fund that the federal government is trying to basically disseminate to municipalities across the country to try and speed up the rate of housing development. And that is intended to drive transformational change within the sphere of control of local government, which is a fancy way of saying they want things to move ahead quicker than what they have in the past. So the fund's objective is obviously to accelerate the supply of housing across Canada, resulting in at least 100,000 more housing units permitted than what would have occurred without the program. The grant program aims to support lasting changes that will improve housing supplies for years to come. Eligible uses of any funding is as follows, and there was 4. Investments in Housing Accelerator Fund action plans. Number 2, investments in affordable housing, investments in housing related infrastructure, and finally, investments in community related infrastructure that supports housing. So obviously, our number 1 project is the expansion to the sewage treatment plant. It is the number 1 financial concern, I think, before council and members of the public. So because we are a smaller municipality, and that is less than 10,000 population, we have a bit of an easier job to apply for. We only have to have a minimum of 5 initiatives in the action plan. We did have a meeting with Paul Shipway from the county on Monday, yesterday, and to specifically talk about what assistance they can give us. So they've retained a consultant. So we've already given them our growth numbers, basically the building permit activity over the past number of years. So the consultant is working out what our numbers are looking like. So it's interesting because, again, this fund is intended to speed up development. So our rapid rate of growth in the past, actually, it's interesting because if that continues, we're already doing well. But because this fund is intended to accelerate stuff, we have to be over and above that. So it's going to be interesting to see how the application is going to be worded, and those applications, we don't know when they're going to come out. Paul from the county expected the larger municipalities applications, so those municipalities over 10,000, he expected that application will be dropped from the feds on the 15th of June. They haven't said when the municipalities under 10,000 application will be done. It may be a month later, but I think our biggest point is we want to be prepared when it does finally come down, and how are we going to proceed forward. So again, the county is being very helpful, and we will continue to work towards preparations. So when that application comes down, we want to be one of the first ones through the gate to apply for it. I realize one of the questions that may come from council is, what are we looking at? 4 billion across the country. What does that actually mean? That's an impossible question to answer. We don't know. We're hoping it looks pretty good, but even if it's $1 million towards a $20 to $22 million project, it's not going to move the needle that much when it comes to decision-making time. But hey, $1 million is $1 million. We're never going to look the other way and not take it. So if we can get it, we're going to try and get it. And again, the purpose of the report tonight is just to sort of update council where we are in the process and to be prepared, because there will be a motion of support from council that will be required. And we will continue to work towards that. So, thank you.
Questions? Councillor Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it's Ron, just my question for Ron. So will part of the criteria be that the federal government's going to tell us where we have to build or change that up? Like,
So
because
through
we're
you,
doing
Madam Mayor,
everything we're supposed to do now,
council,
right?
yeah.
We're doing everything we're supposed to be doing now. So I'm just wondering what's the other criteria?
Well, none of the documentation that we've seen says where we have to put it. Okay, they speak to things like intensification. They speak to removing barriers such as development approvals, streamlined development approvals. They talk about delegation of approval authorities from council to senior staff, for instance. What's already happened with site plan agreements, for example. So those are the types of things. They don't actually say, you have to put growth here or here, but they want, it's quite a range of activities that they want you to look at. One of the things is to sort of review your inventory of property that the municipality owns. Is any of that property available for development? And it's those types of things that form part of your action plan.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay.
Any other comments or questions on this? Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. My question is, so for all these steps we have to do to be eligible to apply, is there a cost? Is there going to be a cost for these, all these tasks we have to do? Like, are we gonna have to get our own consultant, or are we able to just piggyback off the county, or are there gonna be any costs for that?
So through the mayor to Councillor Hodgins, at this point, we're not anticipating any consultants costs. We are going to be able to piggyback on what the county has been able to do for us. How much they can do for us is the question at this point. I don't see where we would have to put out money for a consultant. The only thing that I can see on the horizon is that council will have to commit to an action plan, and that action plan can be done after we receive approval, if we receive approval.
Okay, and just a follow up, maybe more of a comment. Um, so it says a follow-up report in the near future and a motion of support from council will be required in order to make the formal grant submission. And I guess just looking ahead to applications probably coming up soon. Like I'd be in support of, I guess, making that motion now or authorizing staff to proceed with this. Like, it sounds good if we can get funding. Like we're trying to support housing and growth as well. So if that's something we could consider at this meeting, creating a motion to just giving staff the authority to make that grant submission, then I'd be open to that, but be open to hear what council says.
Through the mayor to Councillor Hodgins, I appreciate your vote of confidence. However, I do think we need to get sort of our heads wrapped around, and I do need some conversations with members of other staff to see what specific actions we are going to put forward in the action plan. So I think we need as a staff to get together. I do need to consult with some members of council as well to see what your appetite is. And then we'll bring forward what the actual plan is, because I do think that needs formal approval from council, and council members need to know what you're committing yourself to, really.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because I think we need to be careful because there is going to be a cost to our community. And what I mean by that is a change of look. Because the little bit I've looked into this, it's how we're doing business today and how we're going to change business tomorrow to accelerate housing. And until we see what that looks like, I really don't know where I sit in that myself, for the cost of our community, the way it looks today, to whether this is how much this is going to benefit us or not. So.
Any other questions or comments? I do think, from what I've read, is that regardless, like I know the larger one is supposed to be coming out before the one directed to smaller communities. But everything I've read indicates that they want to have that out for June 30th. I would just say we should be prepared at least for the next council meeting, for sure. Follow up though to that, I mean, a number of the things that they, say that we can be doing, we're already doing. I mean, the big one they keep saying is, the e-permitting. Well, we're already doing that. So, I think, like looking to the deputy mayor's point, what else can we do that isn't just a program just to say we've actually gone through this fund. So my question is, at the last meeting, we had talked about getting in touch with MP Fragascatas, and I'm just thinking we should probably try to really work on that, because I know that he's a big proponent of this, and he might have some information to help with that.
So for example, they give you some suggestions of things you can look at. And one of the suggestions was to make second and third units as of right. So some units are already as of right, but they also want you to look at, for example, your inventory of properties. So for example, we have already talked about that one lot that we have on Nicolline, for example. And we've talked about selling that as a housing lot. We could make that as part of this, but I don't think they would be happy with that large of a lot with just one house on. So there's two sides to this, and that's the thing that, it has to be, it needs council approval on, for example. So because we can't do that obviously without council support. So, but it's those kinds of things that, it has impacts on our community. And do we want to do that? Is that what we want for our community?
The county is going to play a very big role in this, I assume. We're going to wait for direction, I assume, from planning there, aren't we? Or from our planner?
Sorry, through
From
the
our
mayor
planner?
to deputy mayor. The planner has a very big part of this. So, if things go very well, we may well have a good planning report at the next meeting to discuss some of the impacts, depending on which one of the suggested action items are out before us or on the table, I guess. So we have a selection that we can choose from. Which ones does council want to pursue? And I think there's consequences for planning, there's consequences for public works, there's various comments that need to be taken into account before a decision gets made.
And I think we have to remember too, that it's, Dan is working on our behalf. It's not a countywide plan, because just from the population standpoint, if we do it from a countywide stand, then we're 80,000 people. So now we're out of that less than 10,000 population envelope that we can accommodate. So every municipality is going to have to come up with their own. The municipalities that want to participate in this are going to have to come up with their own. So that's that. It's not going to be a countywide thing. Otherwise.
So if I may, just one additional comment. The meeting we had with Paul Shipway from the county yesterday, he did suggest that we need to sort of draw the line from the fact that we need an expansion to our existing sewage treatment plant in order for us to continue to grow. So he did make that point during our meeting as well, that we need to make sure that they understand that we need financial help so that we not only grow faster, but grow period. So, it's going to be interesting because again, $4 billion sounds like a lot, but there's a lot of municipalities across the entire, and you think, what does $4 billion buy in the city of Toronto, for example? I don't know. Like we don't know. We just don't know what the final outcome is going to be.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, not liking this app. No, it's not closing. Okay. All right. So at this time, it's just for information. You don't need anything to at least like direct council to keep or staff to keep moving.
No,
So,
we're
okay.
going to continue to
All right.
move forward. And like I said, if everything goes well, I'm hoping that it'll probably be mostly a planning.
Right, exactly. Perfect. Excellent. So if I can get a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman, all in favor? That's carried.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the next report is the ABCA cost apportionment agreement. This is sort of a follow-up to the delegation we had with the ABCA. I believe that was a couple of months ago. Am I stealing your thunder?
No.
Okay. I thought you wanted me to do this one. So the agreement that's before council tonight is again a follow-up to the delegation that we did have from the ABCA, and that recognizes the changes that are coming about in 2024 due to the new legislation. So again, the cost apportionment agreement was attached. We are fortunate to have a member of the board with us tonight on council. So if I can't answer your question, maybe Jayden can, but again, it's fairly straightforward. The question mark before us is, there's no impact to the 2023 budget. However, there will be an impact, and for me to suggest anything otherwise is false information, because at this point we don't know exactly what the final impact to budget will be for 2024 and going forward. So at this point, this is the best we can do, and we put that agreement before council.
Okay, questions on the agreement in front of us? Okay, then you've got a motion in front of you that the report be received and that council approve the cost apportionment agreement between the Township of Lucan Biddulph and the Asabo Bayfield Conservation Authority, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman, all in favor? It's carried.
And just, if I may, Madam Mayor, a couple more items just before I hand it over to our clerk. First one, the deadline for AMO delegation requests is this Friday, I believe. So we need to, I just one last call. Did anybody have any other suggestions other than the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, the Ministry of Infrastructure?
Minister of Education.
I believe that was going to be coordinated through the county, was it not? Because it's not just us. Do you want me to follow up with that?
What, I guess, what is the county issue with
Well, because
education?
it was,
Yeah,
it was
I'd like
more than
our
just
issue.
us, I thought.
I hadn't heard that.
I will follow
Okay.
up with Paul Schiff.
I would,
But what was your concern, Councillor Regan?
would be with Wilberforce. I think I mentioned last meeting that we need a voice. Where we represent the township, we represent the ratepayers and their children, and we need to have a voice. If we have an opportunity to bring those concerns to the minister, I think we should.
So the specifically the Wilberforce growth plan and
Yes.
investment, no matter what it could possibly look like.
Yes,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
And just then on that note, I would just remind, if we are successful on that, our trustee, Arlene Morel is attending AMO, so she should sit on that if we are successful with that.
The next item I had was the just, and I'm sure everybody read the paper. They've seen that the province has now backed off on the on their plan to allow up to 3 severances per farm parcel. So they have walked that back. I believe that was last Thursday, was in the London Free Press. So that is good news. I think we all breathe a sigh of relief at that one. And the last one was part of the agenda under the bylaws tonight is obviously the largest one we have is the passage of the development charges bylaw. So I just wanted to alert council that that is scheduled for passage tonight. It's bylaw number 26 in the listing.
All right, thank you for that, Ron. Were there any questions on anything that either Ron's presented or just those last verbals? Okay, Tina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a kind of housekeeping report here regarding the previous COVID vaccine policy that was implemented in 2021. As everyone knows, declaration of emergencies were lifted, and earlier this year, the World Health Organization ended the global emergency status for COVID-19. Since there are currently no provincial government mandates for the vaccine in place, most employers are shifting away from vaccination policies. Staff has contacted the health unit and they noted while the vaccination is strongly recommended, most employers have lifted policies requiring it. So as such, we are doing the same here. And if there's any questions, I will be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Tina. Questions? Okay, and then you've got a motion in front of you that council receives report number CL-06-2023 and further direct staff to repeal policy number 102-05-2021. A mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that's carried. Did you have any verbals or anything, Tina?
Just to note, I will be attending the AMCTO conference next week. Last year I found a lot of the workshops useful and we did implement some of the things that I learned there. So hopefully this year I'll come back with some new stuff to work on.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tina. Nothing with building finance, Catherine.
Thank you. The report I have in front of you is the treasurer's statement for development charges for 2022. This report is required annually under the DC Act, and it's just to give council the activity for the prior year of what we collected, what we withdrawn, and our balances. And also we have to make the statements available to the public. There's different options you can do for that, but I suggest just putting it on the website. Other municipalities I've seen, they just mention that it's available in the clerk's office if anyone wants to see it, but I recommend doing that. So nothing too exciting with it, just the information's there, and with the statements has more of the details by the sections as needed or as required for in the legislation.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Questions or comments? Were you looking for direction or you're going to internally decide the best way to post?
It's in my
Okay.
recommended motion is for information, just to support to, so put it on the website.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on that? Counselor Hodgins.
Thanks. Just one quick question. On page 404, on the table that shows the projects funded by DCs in 2022. The top project, Lucan Supply, or sorry, Water Supply Lucan. It notes that it's from the early 1990s. So I was just curious. So that's been like consistently drawing on DCs for a very long time. Like, will that just continue or is that going to end anytime? That one?
The details are if you look at the background study with the DC report, you'll see all the projects that are listed and all the information, and that's basically what it says. It's with such an investments, they're just recouping on what the costs that could be apportioned to future. And so we're still establishing or still under those numbers yet. So that just allows us to continue to include it in the DC's charge. So therefore, once we collect it, what do we take for the year? Then I move it out, put it back to reserves to recoup those costs that were spent many years ago.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
It just goes to show you how long it takes to pay for a project, right? Any other comments? Okay, then you do have a motion in front of you that report number FIN-09-2023 be received for information and that the treasurer DC statement be posted on the municipal website. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Did you have anything verbal, Catherine?
No, not at this time.
We have no planning. So Jeff, Public Works.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I have three reports tonight, and I have two important verbal updates that I'll go through. The first report tonight is on the traffic calming measures. And this report is a follow-up to the previous report that came through on April 4th, 2023. I won't go back over too much of the background because we're just rehashing some of the information that was in that first report. Part of it was in the discussion portion of it. We looked at two different types of streets, basically the local streets and the connector streets, which are more of the county roads. So in the local streets, we do get comments, complaints. They come in about excessive speeding. However, when we did go back and look at the data, that a majority of the motorists are not driving or are not speeding. They're basically driving at the posted speed limit or below. As part of this, we looked at there may be a connection that indicates that maybe the current speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour, although people are following it, it may be that there's an indication that it's too high for what the residents want to see on their local streets. And so that they view it as that there is speeding going on because they view the speed as too high. And yet people are not speeding because they're following the speed limit. In some of that data, there is a correlation, or not in the data, but in the comments that do come in, we do receive a higher level of amount of comments based on the streets with higher traffic volumes. So there is a bit of a correlation there, particularly streets like a Gilmore, Kent, Nicolline, which do have a higher volume than some of our other streets. As part of this discussion, I would advise that as part of all the options I'm going to go over, that we continue to bring in the data we do collect the data and we continue to review the data. And that would be something I would suggest with all the options I'll go over. One of the other recommendations I could, bring forward to council when we're looking at traffic calming measures is that council could consider a community survey to help determine the views of the residents and the level of service that they're in. And this is going back stemming to is there a feel that 50 kilometers is too fast for our local roads? Having said all that, I did bring forward kind of 4 options for council to think about. And one of the options right now is for council to keep status quo. Basically, we continue to go with the same 50 kilometers an hour, with the exceptions of areas such as our school and parks, which are posted at 40, and continue to collect information and go from there. I think this is reasonable. It's, we don't, it is something that we can continue to do. Option 2 would be to keep the speed limit at 50 kilometers an hour, with the exception of our parks and our school areas. But introduce and talk about introducing traffic calming signage or devices to help promote slower driving or safer driving on all the streets. And with this option, it's a very conservative way to start to implement traffic calming while we collect more data. Third option the council could look at is keeping the speed limit at 50 and expand the list of streets that are posted at 40. And I would include that you could go a step beyond and start including some of our higher traffic volume roads, such as a Gilmore Drive, and reduce those to 40. However, I'm not recommending this option to council because I think this is a targeted approach. And I think, I think that the concerns are more about neighborhoods rather than certain streets. I think if we just start looking and targeting, we end up coming back year after year with another target in it. And my fourth option is that we do change our neighborhood streets, our local streets to 40 kilometers an hour. And as in my report, I say this is not something that is new. It's not a new concept. In fact, in 2015, the Ontario government announced a plan to reduce residential speed limits from the statutory default of 50 kilometers, which is in the Highway Traffic Act, and lower it to 40, or giving all municipalities the option to set their own speed limits. Today, through the Highway Traffic Act, municipality can set a speed limit of 40 kilometers in defined areas. So you have to list the areas you want to be 40 kilometers. You can't just blanket it and say, yeah, we're just going to go with 40. You actually have to define the streets and list it in the Highway Traffic Act. Let's see, just hold on. So if that was the today, there are municipalities beginning to do this. This is not unusual. There's a lot of communities looking at this. And if we allow drivers to go 50 or under, and yet the municipality is still receiving comments that the traffic's going too fast, this option makes sense. And I guess, the question would be then, is the speed limit wanted by all our residents? Because comments do come in, and that's maybe not an exact, a good review of what the entire neighborhood wants, would be my only concern. However, saying that, I think as a council and as members of council, you live in the community, you've heard some of the comments, and you might have a better take at where these comments are coming from than I do. I did include in the report, I did reach out to the township of Central Wellington, particularly because of the town of Elora. They have posted all their neighborhoods. You drive in Elora, they're all 40 kilometers. I did talk to the Public Works manager. Before they lowered the speed limit, they did track the comments and the feedback, and they did see it coming from all across their community. So after 2 years of being in place, there is a feeling that it has reduced this by reducing the speed limit. It has not eliminated all speeding, obviously, but it does make the streets a safer place by trying to keep the speed limits down. Council asked staff for a report on traffic calming, indicating that there is a concern with vehicle speeding. I do believe this is a viable option for council to consider. And it does create safer neighborhoods. I'll continue, and then we can go back and break this down a little bit further. The other section was the county roads, or our collector roads, and these are the roads that come into town. And we know there is speeding there. The data does show that in these transition zones, there is people let off on the accelerator and they coast into town, and they are speeding. And again, in my previous report, this is not unusual. We have nothing different here than anywhere else in Middlesex County. So when we were looking at the part of this is that the roads are designed, a county road is designed for high speeds, smoothness. They're a very good road, and they transport us at higher speeds. And then as soon as we enter into an area where there's a population, we require everybody to slow down. And that's where everybody, the roads promote us to continue to go at a higher speed. So that's kind of where these collector roads, it really becomes an issue. So traditionally, the deterrent to the speeding has always been the enforcement of the speed limit. And this is still the case. It is still the responsibility of the police as outlined in the Highway Traffic Act. As one of the new things that are coming is speed cameras. Are being introduced. There is still a lot of unknowns, and there's still a lot of regulation that is still coming in with those. And I have talked to the engineer at the county, and there's still a lot of questions on how and the way they are introduced on county roads. So I see this as a great option in the future. I just don't see it as an option at the present moment. And when you talk about road engineering, we can review road engineering to help calm traffic. But this is generally done in areas where there is a natural condition that amplifies the hazard of speeding. Basically, going down a hill leading into a town that might have a curve on it that promotes or that does have some hazards in it. There is ways to re-engineer the road to make a road safer. Again, this doesn't really play into our municipality. Our roads are fairly straightforward coming into town. I don't see re-engineering our roads as an option at this time. As a lower tier government working with the county, I mean, we can use education as our tool. And I think we've already talked about this when we use our speed display signs. We have 2 mobile ones and we have 3 stationary ones. It does not take the place of enforcement, but it works with enforcement. I think there was a question, from a counselor on a couple of our signs in Granton. And we went back and looked at the data. We still have speeding in Granton, but it certainly looks like it's come down in the overall speed that cars are traveling. So this is a reminder, slow down, and it's promoting drivers to do that. It doesn't take the place of a police officer. I think one of the great things about, and if you talk to the OPP, they're willing to work with us in a program where maybe we can do enforcement and put our speed signs out there, our display signs, and we can do both at the same time or in conjunction with police officers doing some enforcement. But I really think that would be probably the best way of trying to slow traffic down coming into our towns. I don't think you can get away with really traffic calming education other than to include enforcement with it. However, in connection with the speed report, I did make a recommendation or did talk about a permanent speed display sign on Denfield Road. And I would like to touch on that because I do believe that coming into the village of Clandyboy would be an ideal place for a speed display sign. We're finding that when we did look back at the data, there is a high volume of high traffic coming into Clandyboy. And it is a real transition from rural roads to urban, and it's our residents that are in the urban section. And I think it's a great place to remind traffic to slow down because of that change in urban setting. So I do include that in this report that I do recommend, and that we do put a speed sign up there. And just to continue on before we get back into questions, one of the things I just wanted to touch on is the impact to the budget. We did include in the 2023 operational budget options for funding. So I don't think we did include a speed display sign as well. So I don't think, when we talk about some of these options, there's not a financial at this point, a real consideration. It's more about options of how we want to address some of these traffic calming measures. So I'll kind of stop there, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jeff, for that detailed report. I know it's one that we've been waiting for, so I appreciate the work that you put into it. Comments or questions from council? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, I guess I got a couple comments. Just, I do think we need to force the change of the driver's behavior. I'm not a fan of going from 50 to 40, to be honest. I'm a fan of confirming if it's perceived speeding or if there is a speeding issue. I don't want to just, you made a great point, the roads promote speed. Well, Ken Street and Gilmore, changing it to 50 or 40, that those roads promote speed. So unless we, to me, confirm that there's speeding issues, and then from there, I was in Dorchester the other day, and it was funny. It was a road like Gilmore and Kent, and no one likes speed bumps, and I don't like speed bumps because it affects everybody. And this is the 80-20 rule. I think 80% of the people really obey the speeding, 20% don't. That create the complaints. But hitting it, going over that speed bump, definitely I didn't like it, but it caused you to slow down and then proceed. And so I do think, whether it be center line or edge line delineators, speed bumps, different things like that, I would, rather than investing in changing signs and leaving our roads fast, I'm not a fan of that. And also, I think we need to confirm if it's perceived speeding or if it's speeding. So just a couple comments.
Just Councillor Regan had his hand up, but just on that road in Dorchester, was it a permanent speed bump or was it there essentially for the season?
I assume all speed bumps in the environment we live in all come out probably during the winter time. I got to assume that, but it was because it's interesting now too, because there is painting on the roads that'll give it the illusion that it's a speed bump. It's kind of an interesting thing too, and then that can stay out year round, and that's an interesting thing because it looks like you're gonna, if this was a speed bump, and that would definitely be taken down during the winter months. Yep.
All right, thanks for that. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jeff, thank you very much. Very detailed report. I appreciate it. So the issue is that the perceived 50 is a statutory speed, kilometers an hour is a statutory speed. That's still being perceived by our community as being too fast. And I understand that, but I mean, if you put 40, then it does work. I mean, overall is what we're saying is that it does bring the speed down. We may have to down the road do something in conjunction with that. And whether it is other traffic calming measures, whether it is perceived speed bumps, and to Deputy Mayor's point, absolutely. But I mean, we have to start somewhere because we've studied this, we've talked about this for some time. So I actually like option number 4 because it's doing something proactive now. We're actually trying to get the speed limits to come down. It could be done in conjunction with an OPP program, that a blitz or something. The other thing we should, and I really do think we should move forward that, and there's if I would even make the motion to adopt option 4, because we do need to do something, and it's in part and parcel with that is that permanent display sign going into Clandeboye, because that's been a concern. I've heard that a number of times from residents. I know that I myself personally have called the OPP. They've gone out there, they got back to me, they made a number of, they've administered a number of tickets. I don't know about the education anymore, because nothing says education like $150 traffic ticket. So I think in conjunction with lowering those speeds, getting the community or getting the OPP out there to start setting up speed traps, those kinds of things. But again, that might be the first place to start. But again, we've been talking about it for some time now. We really haven't done anything about it. I think this is where we sort of need to start and just make that. And again, if you have, you know, if you say 50, people are going to go 60. If you say 40, they're going to go 50. The issue is that people still say that 50 is too quick. It's perceived in our neighborhoods. We've got lots of kids on the streets, and I think again, we just need to do this just community wide, and say that's it, and then we can go from there. What other types of traffic calming measures that we can come up with, whatever it happens to be. But this is where I think this is where we definitely need to start, and we definitely need to have that permanent speed sign out in Clandeboye. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Jeff for the report as well. I like the way you have separated it into kind of 2 sections. We have the local roads, local streets, and then the county roads and the approaches into town. Yeah, I agree. Like with the options available for council, like I am interested in the just the overall, let's just lower the speed on all the streets to 40 and just kind of get everything slowing down a little bit. It might just help on those local streets. And maybe a question then would be for those more collector roads and county roads, would the 40 encompass the entire area and be those as well? Or would those more collector roads stay at 50? Or is that all open for, I guess, discussion and decision?
No, and through the mayor, that's a good question. No, when we talk about the 40, if there's a time to change a county road, it'd have to go through the county. So really what I'm only talking about, the option here is on our local streets only. If there was, if there was a need or a requirement or a want to go to a county road, that's a whole different ballgame altogether. And there's a lot of other information, because these are collector roads. They are transportation system roads that they're a different breed in themselves rather than the local roads. The local roads are neighborhoods that lead to the parks, that lead to where kids are biking and that sort of thing. Whereas the county roads tend to lead more to the traffic requirements. And just a side note before and again, one of the things I just want to just kind of remind, and this was in the previous report, when we did look at the data on the local roads at 50 kilometers, we found the percentage of speeders to be virtually, it's not there. Like it's basically most of the traffic is either at 50 or below. It's well over 95%. So this is not about, at this point, it's not about, I don't believe, I've said it in a couple of times, that it's not about our local roads. They're not speeding. Like there's no need to put a traffic officer on our local roads. It's do we want to slow the traffic down below 50? We can put in some speed bumps. We can put in some signs that promote people to go even slower, even though they're not technically speeding. Or do we go as Councillor Reagan has said and bump them down to 40? But like I said in this report, my only concern is I don't know whether this is a community-wide feeling or whether it's not. Unfortunately.
Thanks for those comments. You mentioned data collection a lot and possibly you think it'd be a good idea to do a survey, I agree that that might be like before doing a wide scale change, if that is something we're gonna be doing, it might not hurt to get that survey out there and get people's thoughts on it, just to see if it is desired. I think with the amount of young people we have living in our community, and I think we saw that at CEDC with that Environics report that we'll get the data shared at some point, but we have a huge like youth population. And if you see it going around the neighborhoods, at least in Lucan, like you see kids on scooters and bikes and on the road and playing road hockey. And so I think, yeah, just generally bringing down what the standard is, what the posted speed limit is, I think that could just certainly help. On the enforcement part, absolutely, I think enforcement on those transition zones would be very helpful. I'm sure once somebody gets one of those $300 tickets or those demerit points for going 90 and a 50 on those approaches, they're gonna smarten up pretty quick. So, and that doesn't necessarily, I don't think that has to come from the municipality. I think we as counselors can reach out to the OPP, residents can reach out to the OPP. But I guess having that local office here too, we can maybe leverage that relationship and have some more blitzes and more attention to that. That's it. Thanks.
I might just comment your question about the county roads. So I think it was last year that the county reduced the speed on the Granton line. So the Granton line had always been 90 kilometers and then reduced to 50 as you came into the village. So all of Granton line now is 80 kilometers. And I believe that they've even moved the sign out a little bit, like right at the start of the village at 50 kilometers. So, that's where the county has done that in certain areas where they've reduced it back to 80. And I think Denfield is still 90. I think Denfield's still 90, but yep.
One more question. So with Main Street as well, like the connecting link, I guess who gets to say on that? Like is if that was going to potentially be considered to be lowered, even if it's just in kind of one area, do we have a say in that, or?
I might take a stab at this one because I've been here the longest. Very good question. I would have to look at our agreement because I would suggest that would have to be almost a joint. I can't imagine a situation where we would have the authority to lower the speed without MTO input. So at this point, without having the agreement right in front of me, I'm thinking that we'd have to go back, but we can look into that.
Any other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, I guess I'll just reiterate what I said, but we only have so much money to spend, obviously, and it's, one thing I think that's been overlooked, it's easy to say go 50 to 40. That's not free. That's not no charge. And again, the roads we're talking about, Kent and Gilmore, that keep coming up, those roads promote speed. And I don't think, I do think taking that money rather than changing two numbers, but putting speed bumps or center line, edge line delineators, narrowing the roads a bit will be more impactful than changing a number on those roads, maybe initially. And then, and overall, I agree with Councillor Hodgins there on a survey and seeing what the community, wants. It was just interesting when Jeff made the comment as far as that there's, there is no speeding issue with the speeding of 50 within our community. That's not a large concern. So anyways, it's just more of a comment too on a budget standpoint.
So with the budget, and I mean, I'm not looking for actual dollars and cents. You just have a blanket dollar figure in there. The thought would be that we would invest in another radar speed sign, and then the balance could be used either for traffic calming or signage or a combination of both, right? So that's, yeah. So I guess my thoughts on it are, I'm kind of in between the two, because certainly the statistics that we have received indicate that we don't have a speeding problem. We have a perception of a speeding problem. And that in itself can be problematic and concerning for families and all of that. So again, education, I think, is always where you start. I guess I would almost like to see more of a rollout. So, you know, start with maybe those streets that we know, as the deputy mayor said, promote speeding. We know that we have essentially runways in our community. So what is it that we can do to address that now? Because to Councillor Regan's point, we have been talking about this for a long time. So what can we do to get impact now? So why not address the streets that are causing us the issue? Get the survey out, try to get some public, get a better understanding of where the issues are coming from. Is it all over the municipality? Is it all over our urban centers, or is it only these one-off streets? I think we need to get a better sense of that. And I do think that we had spoken about reducing the speed, if we haven't already, around the school, like around Wilberforce. And if we haven't done that, or maybe increasing the signs and in that area, I think would be key as well. So I don't know whether I am right at changing it to 40 at this moment until we gather more information. But I do think that there are things that we should be doing today that will give us, will start to have impact in the community. And I am in agreement with I was almost going to call you Dr. Regan, with Councillor Regan, that that we should move on the sign in Clandeboye.
So Madam Mayor, yeah, I would probably, sounds like an option too. That even though, you know, we could take the status quo, but we do introduce traffic calming measures and try to get the traffic to slow down even further and drive safe, right? Centerline markings, right? They may not, someone who wants to speed can still speed, but maybe it's going to actually teach drivers to drive slower. So I think if what you're describing is an option in option 2, we can certainly move forward in some of those areas and start introducing that.
Okay, any other questions or comments? So at this point, the motion in front of us is to receive the report for information. But I'm thinking that staff does need to be given some direction. So I would be looking for my colleagues to come up with a motion at this time to give staff direction on how to move forward on some of the options available to us. Deputy Mayor Manders?
I think we heard a lot from everybody here, and just you know, from what Jaden said about, you know, he liked part of it with the survey, and I like that too. And then, you know, I liked what I somewhat liked in Councillor Regan. I don't know if we should just take time to just, before we recommend maybe a motion, maybe, or have Jeff, you know, 2 meetings from now, or I mean, I don't know unless someone's ready to just create something out of their head. I know I'm not, but I thought there was some good input. I thought for a public works manager now to go back to his desk with is what I thought.
Okay, so then that's fair. Then we'll receive it for information and staff will come back with something else. Or I guess maybe that can come on, continue on business arising, but maybe put a targeted date. And that would allow council to think about what it is that you want more fulsomely. So you can look at the motion, you can look at the options that Jeff's put in front of us. And if it is a combination of things from all of them, then maybe work with Jeff to come back with something. But I would say to make the date. So whether it is the next meeting in June or the meeting in July, and maybe it's the meeting in July because I think June's a planning meeting, and I believe that's a full meeting. Oh, okay. So, yep.
Another thing I was going to add that Jeff, you know, is the photo radar ticketing too, that I'm certainly not opposed to. I brought it up at another meeting. It sounds like we're unclear on county roads, MTO roads. I always thought the municipality could put it up at their schools and parks, I thought. And then I believe there's companies out there that you lease the product. It's what we're going to see later on tonight from Paul. It's like a revenue sharing. I think that needs to be investigated a little more too. Also, just a comment.
All right, so a motion to, oh, sorry, Jeff, yep.
Yeah, so maybe just a little more clarification on what, like, are we need more information on the options available or more information on what the
I don't necessarily know if there's more, if we need more information on the options. I think it's kind of, you've given us a lot of options, and I think we all like something maybe from all of them. And so maybe coming up with that, like, the survey, I think we're looking for some public engagement. So maybe that's the first step to start. Maybe take on a couple of the projects that we can knock off, the quick wins, whether it's speed bumps or something like that, and then maybe get more information on the actual reduction of the speed. I think before anybody, I know I'm not ready to commit to reducing it until I get a better sense of what is actually happening in the community and how the community is feeling.
would council be interested in some traffic calming measures to introduce it to a community and see what comments come back, such as centerline marking and speed humps. And we could try and pick an area that maybe is around a park that is already going to be a 40-kilometer-hour zone and see what kind of feedback we get back on that type of measure.
I would be in favor of that, Councillor Regan.
That's actually what I was going to ask, is that we start with something, and we start with so option 2 is where we leave it at 50. We find specific areas that are the problem areas. We work with those at 40, and then we implement. I'm asking that we move forward. We implement some of those other traffic calming measures. We get the survey out to see if we roll it out to the entire community. I think that should be a direction to staff at this point.
Okay.
That would be that's my recommendation.
Okay, gotcha. Councillor Westman, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I'm exactly what Councillor Regan said. I'm in favor of that.
All right, so then maybe the motion is to go ahead with option 2, because I think that gives you some broader scope to work with, and then keep coming back to council.
Yeah, I think that's probably a solid plan.
Okay. So then with that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder, and the recommended motion is to be received for information, but I would think the direction of option 2 is what I think encompasses what council's been saying. Did you have a comment, Councillor Hodgins?
Well, I think we see the benefit in engaging the community and getting some feedback. So if we could include just some wording to have some, either a survey or some sort of engagement to get that rolling as well. Could we add that to the motion?
So how is received for information, or to receive the report, to direct staff with option 2 as set out in the report, and include in community engagement and feedback. Okay. Okay. So have you got it? I'll do it. Yeah. Now that you're clerk, you can clerk it up. Okay, so that's going to be moved by Councillor Regan and seconded by Councillor Hodgins. And is there any discussion on that motion in front of us? Okay, all in favor? And that's carried. And as long as you're clear on how to move forward, that's guess I should ask that before we passed it.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I think that's very clear.
Okay.
And I think that's very clear how we're going to do things.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then you can continue on.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I have a second report. This one certainly is a little different. Part of this reason for this report, it's the blower replacement at the wastewater treatment plant in Lucan. Part of, and this comes through when we do our audits, when we have a problem or a breakdown on, and if it's a capital expenditure, it needs to be put in the right place in the budget. And as we go through capital, some of the larger items are not produced in the 2023 budget until they actually break down, and this is one of those items. So at the Lucan wastewater treatment plant in Lucan, we have 3 blowers, and they provide air to the plant. They provide air through to the different areas. They are critical. We do need the blowers running at all times. All the blowers, all 3 of them do not run at the same time. There is a redundancy built in. At the present moment, we have blower 1 is out of commission and needs to be rebuilt or replaced. We did look, Aqua did go and take it in and got a quote on a rebuild. To rebuild the blower, the quote was $37,966. And the reason for this being so high was that the housing to the blower was wore out, to the bearings had let go, and basically the whole blower had to be basically rebuilt from scratch. So in the process, Aqua then did reach out and get 2 quotes. One was received from Nyler at $42,000 for a replacement blower, and hopefully I say this right, Arizon at $21,988. Aqua did recommend that we take the lesser quote, and they did note that the blower itself is this is the maker of this is a direct manufacturer of the blower. So even though we can buy this blower at a number of different places, truly if you go back to the manufacturer, you get a better deal. Again, in the impact of the budget, the blower replacement is a capital expense. It needs to be funded through the wastewater capital reserve. And it was not in the 2023 budget. So that's why it's in front of council.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Any questions on the report in front of us? Okay. With that, then you've got the motion in front of you. That we received the report and that council approved the repair of blower number 1 at the Lucan wastewater treatment plant. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My third report is a Main Street sidewalk extension. And I think this is a very important piece of a very important report. As council knows, we are building a new commercial center at the far end of town. And there's a rural section of road between the new commercial complex going up and the main part of town. We have not had this section of road in the DCs, and it has not been on our radar for upgrading until we've seen this kind of shift in the development on that side of town. Having said that, I have had comments, and I think there is a reasonable expectation to try to either urbanize that section of road or to at least connect it to the main part of town, so we can at least get cyclists or walkers easily to that complex. So in that discussion, I did have, before I go there, I just, as part of the background, in the new DCs that is going to go in tonight, it is in the new DCs to urbanize. It is a bit of an expensive project because once you start looking at it, it'll need stormwater, curbs and gutter expansion. There is a bit of work there to it. So in that discussion, I did have Dillon Consulting review the road right away and look at another option. And that option is to extend a sidewalk or a pathway out to the shopping center without urbanizing the entire length of the road. And in that, in that review, it was found that there is room to extend a walkway or a pathway out there. And that would look like a combination of an extension of the sidewalks basically from the arena out to the edge of town where we already have existing curb and storm. And then from there, like it would look like a pathway, and I say pathway, but it would be a paved sidewalk so that it would accommodate bicyclers and walkers. And it would have a gravel shoulder between the pavement and the roadway for safety, and then would lead out there and back. It would be available, a paved pathway or walkway would allow us to clean it in the wintertime and maintain it for accessibility year round. So in that, I am looking for a recommendation, or I am recommending to council that we go forward with a design. Because even though, we talk about it, we still need some sort of design in place. And that design would basically be what I just talked about, the extension of the sidewalk across the road. There would be no need for street upgrades here. Basically, that street just lacks the sidewalk itself. And then there would be an extension with an asphalt path, basically from 280 Main Street out to the shopping center. And it'd be wide enough to accommodate pedestrians and cyclists. And then the third part of the design, and this is kind of the important one, would be to design some street lighting along this path so that it would provide safety to the path during the darkness that would be there. This is an option. It doesn't have to be put in exactly at this time. It could be added, but at the same time, it could be added in a way that when we go to urbanize, we're not ripping out the street lighting. The street lighting would be an investment. It would be investment for the future as well. So I think that's one of the reasons why I would recommend that we do light it, is that we're not wasting dollars. I think this is an option that can stay there until council's ready to urbanize, until we realize that there's more, or not realize, until there's more development in that area to promote urbanization. And it would be safe and reliable for a number of years until that could happen. I look at it as a project that I do not believe has to go out to a large tender. I think it could be done in-house. I think this is a project that we could get quotes on certain aspects of the job, whether it's a sidewalk, an asphalt, a shoulder extension, or the lighting itself. And I've talked to Dillon Consulting about that, and they're in agreement that and unless council wanted to push this through in a shorter time frame, it might need to go to a tender. But if we can work and get this done over a reasonable period of time, I have all confidence in staff being able to do this project. And it's not, I guess, probably one of the biggest things is talk about the budget, because this is not a line item in the 2023 budget. It would be an addition to the budget, and it would come from the construction reserve fund. I'm recommending that we move forward with the design work only, and I come back to council with a report after the design has been done with costs associated with doing the work itself, and then we can put forward a timetable that council feels comfortable in. And that's all that's in the report. I kind of wish some of my verbal had gone first, because there is better news with some of the verbal stuff about the construction reserve fund, but I'll leave it at that.
Hey, it's always good to end on good news. So thank you very much for that, Jeff. Comments on this report, Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jeff, I'm just wondering if we're going to urbanize out to the shopping center, and that's going to increase the foot traffic. A lot of people will be walking out to that shopping center because walkable neighborhood, and Most people will be able to do that. I'm just wondering about the crosswalk, if that's something we should also think about in front of the community center, if we need to look at updating, upgrading. We're gonna have a lot more people crossing there. I don't know if that's something we want to think about. I don't know if it needs to be included here, but it was just something that struck me as if we're putting cross or a sidewalk out there, bike traffic, whatever we have, that crosswalk there, is that something that's going to be adequate for pedestrians to cross over to get to the shopping mall? That's just a thought. I don't need an answer, just a comment.
Any other comments on this? Questions? Counselor Hodgins?
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Jeff, for bringing this forward. I think it's great that you're putting this together very quickly. So we can try to squeak it in here before this the commercial site gets built. I guess one question is, I think this comes back to the question I asked earlier, but with this being the connecting link or Main Street, do we need to coordinate this with MTO and get their approval with this project, or have we talked to them at all yet about this?
And through the mayor, so something like this, it is in our control to look after. Some of the aspects that the MTO put on connecting links are more about, well, we know we know traffic lights, but no minor changes like this, adding something to the boulevard is not something the MTO is interested in putting forth information on. The closer we get to the boundary of the connecting link, yes, there it does become a transition zone that they provide comment on. But when we're talking about this far out of town or this at this location, no, we don't. This will be up to the town's decision to do.
Okay, and just one other question. Do you know, does the shopping center, do they have sidewalks internal to their site? So like once the people get there, they're gonna have walking access to get to those stores from the road?
Yeah, and that was we did work with the developer, and he does have an access that he's providing internally, particularly to one of the restaurants, because we know that'll be a high foot area. And then once the foot traffic gets inside the complex, there is further sidewalks in there. So there is a connection to the unit that makes sense, and there's also sidewalks inside the complex.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, then we do have a motion in front of us that we received the report. And that council provide direction to staff. So assuming the direction, just given the comments, is that to proceed with the design. Okay. So if I can get a mover and a seconder for that, Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? That's carried. Did you have anything verbal, Jeff?
I have a verbal, and the first one is a verbal update on this year's construction project, which is a joint venture with Perth South. It's the paving of the Whalen Line, and that paving goes from Granton Line to Highway 7. And the costs are split 50% with Perth South. And the Perth South did issue the tender, and they will be the administrator of the contract. The tender closed with 8 bids, and the low bid of $651,184 was put forward by Brantco Construction. Perth South has worked with this company before in the past and has accepted the bid. The tender is going to council for Perth South for approval. Our share of the tender costs will be $325,992. I just add that there will be additional costs to that for shouldering, graveling, testing, and some minor cleanup work that will be there. When we do look with the additional costs, we are under budget, and we are well under budget. The budget we put into the original was $650,000, $190,000. The budget last fall, and just a little background, when we did make the budget last fall, we set the budget on the asphalt index, which is based across Ontario. It comes out I believe every month or whatever. And we were taking into account inflation. In fact, the index has gone down. It has not gone up. It's gone down enough that it's obviously saving us money. And also, when I talked to Perth South, they believe they got a very competitive bid with this company. They're wanting to start sooner than later, and they would like to be in there next week as a start date. So that's, I think, plays into it. I think they got a very competitive bid. So the capital expenditure in this does come from the capital expenditure account. We do budgeted in 2023 a combination, and I'll make sure I'm right here, Catherine. We did budget a portion of the gas tax, the OCIF grant, and then the rest would come from road construction reserve fund. By lowering this, coming in below budget, it means obviously we don't have to draw from reserves, and that keeps the money in the bank.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Jeff.
It's a big night. So my last verbal update is an update on the site alteration bylaw. So obviously, I'm just kind of giving a little bit of background. The township held an open house on March 30th for input on a proposed site alteration bylaw. Public comments were received, and that included being received up to May 1st. I'd just like to give a little brief background. The vast majority of comments that were received did not want a site alteration bylaw, because a lot of the feeling was that it hindered farming activities, or that agricultural property should be exempt from any such bylaw. A lot of the farming community that came out believes that the bylaw was unnecessary. To follow up, the building department was working on a site alteration bylaw that was going to address small residential developments. I did talk to Arnie. He is going to update the building bylaw to accomplish this, and will not be updating or introducing any site by alteration bylaw. Arnie hopes to have this done by the end of the summer, and this will address some of the issues created by Bill 23. So I think, obviously through building, we can address some of the residential problems or some of the concerns that we had. The conservation authorities did attend the open house, and although they show support for the bylaw, there was no new comments or information brought forward by the conservation authority. In June, I am meeting with two experts on new soil, maybe a little bit background. So in January 1st, there was soil regulations brought in by the province. So now basically, if you're going to dig any soil out and transport it off site, you have to register. And so I am meeting with a couple of people who are call them experts on the new soil regulations, and how this relates to site alteration. These people have worked on site alteration bylaws, and they have dealt with these new regulations. So I'm hoping to get some clarification on how these regulations are going to work. I did mention that the regulations do require contractors to register projects that export fill. I don't have exactly the details on how big the projects have to be. I'm sure it doesn't stop one person from moving one load of dirt, but I'm sure there is, a volume there that's in the regulations. I certainly will bring more information to council once I go through that meeting, and that'll be an interesting one, because I think it does address some of the concerns about fill being brought in from sources that maybe should be tested or contaminated, and that sort of thing. So and that will be run by the Ministry of Environment. And so that basically is an update on where I sit at that. I'm not sure if council has some more input or some questions on some of these kind of things I brought to light.
Okay, any comments from council on the update as to where we are with the site altering? Councillor Westman.
Yeah, so I think regulating the source is a good start. I think it's a good place to get our feet wet on this particular issue because like a lot of these developments are producing a large amount of fill that has to be taken away. And that's where it's coming from. And then it gets, trucked down our roads and, in large volumes and dumped wherever. And I think if there's a registration process involved and they're, they have to kind of account for where it's going, I think that'll be a good start because that hasn't been really something that we could count on in all cases. What prompted this bylaw or the request for a bylaw was issues in our own community as well as another community I represented when I sat on the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board, and where there was hundreds of loads of fill brought in and wetlands were filled in, small water courses were filled in. And we, I think from the Conservation Authority's perspective, they want to be able to make sure that anytime that fill is brought in, that there's no protected wetlands that are affected or whatever. Also, there's a side to this as well, that when large amounts of fill are brought in, we don't want that to create a problem for water and neighboring properties, especially residential properties and rural residential properties where it may alter the natural drainage of the property. So I think this is a good start. I think being able to regulate the source is a good start. And, it might alleviate some of the concerns from the farming community that they had. And it may have as good of an effect as what the intent was in the beginning. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Any other comments? No, I think Jeff, your plan with Arnie, he's made it clear how he's going to deal with it. And then the more information that you get after you meet with these experts on this new regulation and how that affects our municipality, then we can go from there. So I think it's just wait and see, more information to come.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Jeff before we move on? All right, thanks for that, Jeff. Paul, Parks and Recreation.
Thank you to you, Madam Mayor. The first report in front of council tonight is in regards to the Ontario Trillium Foundation grant. We're looking for some direction from council as we did meet with an advisor regarding the Ontario Trillium grant, as we are very hopeful to receive this funding. We discussed potential projects to better align ourselves with success. And the two projects that were identified with the advisor that would be good projects to look at are one, outfitting the new fitness space at the Lucan Biddulph Community Memorial Center, and two, development of an all-wheels park to replace the Lucan Skate Park. So because both these projects align with the healthy and active community goals of the Ontario Trillium Foundation grant capital investment stream, we do feel that they're both good projects to look at, and a maximum amount of $150,000 can be applied for. Funding announcements will not be announced until October of 2023, and no capital purchases may be made prior to this announcement. Due to the October 2023 delay on purchases, staff feels as though this would be a significant delay to the opening of the new fitness space. And this date would align best for the budget discussions regarding the capital project of an all-wheels park for 2024. And although staff was hopeful to secure funding for the fitness space using this fund, the delay in opening, we do feel is not the desire, as we did set a September opening date, hopeful for the RFPs. And as the grant funding is not a guaranteed success, it's not staff's current recommendation that that's the appropriate way, but we felt we should bring it to council for discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Questions or comments on this report? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, no, I agree, but the all wheels park, that makes total sense and well, I think that's great. I mean, we've tore the one down here. It's kind of not an option probably going into 2024. So it's that we for our community. So no, I like that.
Okay. Any other feedback or questions for Paul? Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Do we have a cost estimate for the all wheels park? Because this is a maximum of 150,000. So is that just a portion of that facility?
Through Madam Mayor, it's for development charges. We put in an cost estimate of 300,000. So this would be about 50% of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Then you've got a recommended motion in front of you that we receive the report and to give staff direction to proceed with the application as discussed. Mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor? That's carried. Okay,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The second report in front of council tonight is a follow-up to the digital locker room assignment report that was in front of council previous. The intent of this report is to follow up with some of the questions that arose regarding that, and I hope we're best able to address some of the questions and concerns. So as part of the agreement, that's the draft agreement that's attached to this report, as you'll note, all wall signage must be pre-approved spaces set by the township. So that would require as little or as many spaces as we would allow. If there were further interest, say there was an advertiser that was interested in a specific space within the community center that hadn't been pre-approved, it would have to come to township staff for approval. And this is to help reduce the concern of overexposure. We have control over that, although it was noted that, you know, it is a rare issue to have overexposure in a community setting such as ours. And to be honest, it's a good problem to have, but we all know that people don't always want to walk into what they would call a NASCAR style rink. So I totally understand the concern. And another note regarding local advertisement. So in order for this model to be successful, the support of local advertisers is needed in order to help offset the costs for the initial investment in the digital locker room assignment. So due to that, the existing advertisers that are inside the community center, they'd have first they would get first opportunity to advertise on the digital locker room assignment, as there is a limited amount of space available on there. And we want to promote local advertisement that has already supported the community center as it has in the future. Future Sign really does not have many concerns about us being able to meet this goal. They feel our community center, especially undergoing the transformation, has become a very positive hub for not only our community, but the surrounding communities to attend to. And they think it's going to be quite appealing to advertisers to enter into this. As well as the concerns about if the township feels that there are certain advertisers who do not meet our core values and needs, we can let Future Sign know ahead of time to ensure that those types of advertisers will not be allowed the opportunity to be advertised on either the static signs or the digital signage, as obviously we want to make sure our core values are upheld. As well, static signage has been offered as an opportunity as a revenue generating opportunity right from day one, but it can be removed from the agreement if that's something that the township is not interested in looking at all. One concern that I had from a staff perspective was our user groups such as minor hockey or the junior Cs, they often have their own sponsorship agreements. And would this interfere, because they speak about sole proprietary to those signs? It only refers to the specific static signage and digital locker room signages that they install. For instance, if we had the locker room assignment, we wouldn't be able to, on our portion of it, put up advertising that competes. So it only speaks to those. It would not hinder the ability of our minor sports associations or our junior Cs or whoever we allow to have advertising sponsors to, you know, reflect their thanks for people helping out their teams.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Paul, is there anything further to what he's brought to us? Deputy Mayor Manders.
I believe it is at Middlesex Center. Is there any other communities within an hour radius that use this?
Yeah, Middlesex Center, Strathroy, City of London, St. Mary's, Dorchester, and they are looking at working with Stratford as well. I know some of the people in Stratford that were in other communities before have had success working with Future Sign, and they think that it's a positive opportunity.
Thank you for that, Paul. Councillor Regan.
Hi, thank you very much. Paul, I just want to make sure that when we have people applying to advertise that they're fully aware what our core values are. And that's like clear to them what that is. And who makes that decision about whether or not they've met our core values or not?
So that would be up to the township of Lucan Biddulph. So if upon initial agreement with Future Sign, we will first supply them the businesses that have already supported our community center for them to approach first. And then if there are any types of businesses that we feel don't meet our values that we would not like to see inside the community center, we are to let them know from day one. And then they will not approach those businesses.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other comments on this report? Okay, then you do have the motion in front of you that we received the report and that council directs staff to enter into an agreement with Future Sign Multimedia Displays to provide digital locker room assignment signs and other signage as permitted in consultation with municipal staff. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman, all in favor? And that's carried. Do you have anything verbal, Paul? Nothing. Okay, Lisa, Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any of my updates actually were included in the EDC minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for that. On to councillor comments. Councillor Westman.
Yeah, Madam Mayor. So I did want to mention our trails meeting. We continue to have very productive conversations at our trails meeting. We're looking to do a little bit of a field trip out to one of the locations in our community where we have some trails. I think the path down to the commercial development is going to be a nice addition and help kind of create something for future use. As that whole area becomes developed in behind, it may be part of a loop where we can have a walking trail that will go around the entire community and behind the arena into the new developments back there. So, we're starting to see some real potential for connecting some of our trails together and creating a real good network, and not just in Lucan, but there's other areas around that I think we're going to be able to really take advantage of. Now, we do have some trails in our community that are struggling with some invasive plant species that we're trying to work some arrangements out to help the property owners to be able to continue using their trails. But I think we're on the right track. We've got some good people, and I think we got a good future here. So hopefully in the not too distant future, we're going to be able to come back with some really solid suggestions of where we can start developing. There are some great potentials where we've already built trails, where we have the soccer fields. We can work with that and do some walking paths around that for people attending soccer games. They can do some walking while they're there, and connect that into some natural pathways that along the drainage ditches and what have you. So there's some good things ahead of us.
Good. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Westman. Any other councillor comments? Councillor Regan.
Just sort of one accolade that I'd like to give the Parks and Rec Department. About a week ago, I received an email from a resident who was just lives down the street from me, was a teacher, and they were concerned about the condition of a particular section of Elm Street Park, and just asked if I could do anything about it. I said I couldn't personally, but I knew people who could. So I'd contact Parks and Rec, and got another email at about 8 o'clock that same morning saying that there were 2 members of Paul Smith's staff out there taking care of it. It was cleaning up some benches and some areas around there. So I just wanted to say thank you just for making me look really good. I don't know if it was a coincidence and you're going to do it anyway. Don't care, because it made me look good, made everybody look good. Thank you very much.
Okay, I don't know how to follow that up. Any other councillor comments? Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to comment that I'm very happy to see that we have a big milestone tonight with the new bylaw for the development charges coming ahead. So just very happy that we have brought this forward and that we're going to be now collecting these revenues to support the infrastructure projects that are needed to support the growth that our communities are seeing. So it just has been a priority for me since joining here. So very excited to see this go forward. And thanks to staff and everyone who worked on this.
That's right. A lot of hard work went into this. We just need the province to do their part. But that's another story. Any other councillor comments? I just had one at the last council meeting. We had the presentation from the life cycle people on the countertop composter. And I just wondered if there was a plan for what we might do. There was talk of maybe getting a sense from the public if this was a product that they were interested in. I know that Blue Water is eventually going to roll out a green waste program, but I don't think we've got confirmed dates. We've had the unit in the office for a couple months now, and I didn't know if we had done anything to let the public know that we had it so that they could see it for themselves. But certainly, you know, before we even consider doing anything, we would have to have some community engagement. So certainly that's what I would be interested in, kind of pushing that to see if it's something that our residents are interested in.
So, Madam Mayor, if that's a wish of council collectively, you know, certainly a verbal motion to direct staff to, you know, put together some sort of media campaign. I can work with Lisa to put something out there to try and gauge what the public, you know, is this something that the public would be interested in, I guess is the question. We can certainly publicize the fact that we do have one here so that if anybody does want to see it, touch it, ask questions about it, certainly come in to the office. So we can certainly do that. I guess my question would be the timing. Do we want to do something? Is the council's intent to do something this year? Is it something where we want to position ourselves so we can do something with the budget for next year if it gets to the point where council wishes to subsidize the purchase of those units? That would be a question I would have for council.
I guess for me, I would want more information and this just for the sake of discussion, if 50% of the residents said we want it, we're in for it, then that might, it might cause council to be more aggressive. If there's only a handful, then I don't think there's a need for it. So I would like more information as to, is this something? I know since there was the report on Channel 10 as well, I've had comments about it. So I have had chatter. I have experienced, as I say, chatter. So, but I don't know how widespread it is. And so, Deputy Mayor.
I was just going to comment that, you know, for myself, it'd be nice to get the information out. I thought it was pretty clear. You know, obviously our input, what it needs to be per unit, and then the residents cost. So I don't know if they would be interested or not. It'd be nice in Summerfest and, you know, something like that, and having a sign up sheet that, you know, in 2024's budget, we're considering this, and with any, you know, anybody want to sign up for a future unit. And or the farmers market too is just another suggestion, maybe our unit here, if anybody want to have it out with the product beside it. And again, a sign up sheet clearly stating the cost in that, and just engage the interest for myself, regardless of interest, to a point would be more of a budget item and process, you know, starting it, which isn't that far away, January 1. So just a comment.
Councillor Hodgins.
Just because it's kind of on the same topic, when I went to that Blue Water event recently, there was a lot of talk about waste diversion and composting and preventing this material from going to the landfill. And we heard about that through that delegation. And that product was specific to that on kind of a very small scale, but through the Blue Water presentation, we learned that it's likely that we're going to see more of these green bin programs coming in the future. And with the producers taking over the responsibility of recycling, some municipalities are going to look at shifting then those dollars to getting the green bins going. So it's just kind of on the same topic. And I was wondering if it might be possible, and maybe I'd ask Deputy Mayor if someone from Blue Water would maybe bring some more information to council about what we can be doing or proactively for green bins, like whether, we can be one of the first ones to look at getting those, because it will be, I guess, however quickly they can get the bins made up once things get rolled out in the next couple of years. It just might be interesting to get more information about that. Just
to me, I would not be interested in this if we were rolling out the green bins next year. I think I can reconfirm the date. There was municipalities that were supposed to test the green bins within the Blue Water Recycling Organization, but they did not want to, I'll call it triple tax the ratepayers, because then they're not removing that recycling charge yet until we roll that in 2025 or whatever that date is. And that would be a concern of mine. I wouldn't be interested in adding a third billing to that. But so I think this gives us a couple years to do something like this, to divert that waste. That's kind of a win-win. That it's kind of interesting that from that presentation, it looks like multiple governments put into it, and then we do as well, and then also the person using it. But after once the green bins come into effect, I don't know how much I'd be in favor of subsidizing that myself. But a couple of questions. One, I'll confirm that it's probably not going to get rolled out till they take over the producer responsibilities. And I'll ask if they have any suggestions on that. I do believe it simply goes to the landfill though, and that there is not, nothing that they would, other than what you want to do personally with it and into your own gardens and stuff. But I'll confirm that at the next meeting.
Okay, so with that, Ron indicated a verbal motion to direct staff to start some sort of communication, community engagement. So I would look to my colleagues for that. Deputy or Councillor Regan. I know I keep giving you all these different titles. It's the jet lag. Councillor Regan, and a seconder for giving direction to staff on a community engagement piece. Councillor Westman. And all in favor of that? And that's carried. Thank you very much. I appreciate that support. Any other councillor comments? Okay, no changes to budget. Any notices of motion? Deputy Mayor Mander.
I'd just like to make a notice motion that council reconsider resolution number 2022-159 passed on May 23rd, 2023 regarding the request received from Great Escape RV in regards to the agreement of purchase and sale of part lot 25 concession 4 designated as part 2 on registered plan number 33R-20206.
Okay, and then that will be brought up at the next meeting. Okay, thank you very much. Into motions. And we have one motion in front of us that is regarding the fall 2023 conference for OMTRA. And that is that the Council of the Township of Lucan-Vidolph authorized Tracy Loynes and Rhonda Frieder to attend the OMTRA Fall 2023 conference in Niagara Falls on September 10th to 13th at a cost of $1,150 plus HST. Is that per registrant or for all of it? If that's per, okay, so per. Mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? And that's carried. We have three bylaws in front of us. Bylaw 26-2023, a bylaw respecting development charges, bylaw 27-2023 to authorize the execution of an agreement between the ABCA and the Township of Lucan Vidolph, and bylaw 28-2023, the confirming bylaw. So the motion in front of us is that if no one cares to speak to bylaws 26-2023 through 28-2023 inclusive on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, read a third time and passed. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Counselor Hodgins and Counselor Westman, all in favor? And that's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 8:45 PM. A mover and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Manders and Counselor Regan, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. See you.